The goal for me this morning is to talk about thinking differently to achieve success. If we think about the national landscape, there are several areas that I think are important to highlight. The first being, nationally, there are about 15,000 urban school districts. Poughkeepsie City School District, with 4,700 students, 7 schools, is an urban school district here in the Hudson Valley. Research shows that about 50 million students across the United States attend urban school districts, 50 million. But what's critically important about that number is the idea that there are excellent schools in struggling districts, and Poughkeepsie City School District is a struggling district. There are outstanding classrooms in underperforming schools. I have outstanding classrooms in many of my schools. But there are no high-performing urban districts across the United States. So every school, when we say high-performing, at scale, every school in that district is performing based on the state standardized metrics for that particular state and federal standards. And I think that's critically important as we think about this achievement, this national achievement gap, and the perspective of how students are, how we're driven to serve students, and how students are an important part of this conversation. Only about 70% of students graduate from high school in the United States, only about 70% of students. And of equal importance, when we talk about correlational data, currently, your socioeconomic status as a student predicts high school graduation, your high school outcomes. So when we think about socioeconomic status, low-income students are 7 times less likely to graduate from college than their middle-class and affluent peers. Further complicating this very difficult discourse is the idea that when you disaggregate the data by age 9, many African American and Latino students are already 3 grade levels behind in reading and math, and only half of those students will obtain a high school diploma. Now, I frame this conversation often as this idea of islands of excellence in a sea of mediocrity. And I'm sure if I ask in this room, how many of you have been advocates for your own children to say, I want teacher X, or I want my child in school X? Just by a show of hands. Anyone here in this room? 90% of us have framed the conversation from that perspective. So when we think about equity and excellence, and we think about the opportunities that are available, one of my biggest concerns, and I'll share with you the thinking this morning, is that many educators don't feel this sense of urgency around this work. And as an educator with 30 years, serving in underserved communities across the United States and in the Caribbean and in Europe, one of the most challenging conversations that we have on a regular basis is this idea of being isolated from the larger global community. And so how do we reduce the isolation and make school rigorous and relevant for the children we serve? We talk about the hard skills and the soft skills. So hard skills, mathematics, science, understanding the complexity of being able to read a complex table, for example. And the soft skills are all about collaboration and cooperation and being able to work in an environment of success with others. In the Poughkeepsie City School District, we've set aspirational goals. We currently perform in the bottom 10% of 700 districts in the state of New York, and that's based on about 10 years of data. Our goal is to rank in the top 10% of the 700 districts in the New York State area by the year 2020. Some of you in this audience might say, can they really do that? Yes, we can and we will. When we think about this work, sometimes it's framed from this idea of sort of reform du jour. And I know there are a number of conversations that you'll hear this morning, particularly from my esteemed dais guest, who I'm sharing this dais with this morning, my superintendents, Dr. Ryacek and Dr. Walkley. You'll hear about Common Core and other reform ideas across New York State and the United States. But we're driven by this strong sense of purpose and intentionality around the work. So if you look at something as strategic as the advanced placement courses, which are global indicators of achievement, our goal is for our students to perform minimally at a level 3 on a 5-point scale. And this past year, one of our students performed, she was only one of 91 in the world to achieve mastery, a perfect score on the Spanish language and literacy exam. A perfect score. Only 91 in the world achieved that perfect score. So understanding, setting these goals and being strategic about achieving them is part of the work that we ask each and every one of you to commit to in this room as we look at partnerships across the Poughkeepsie City School District. Our goal is really a business model, quite frankly. My background is mathematics. I was a math teacher 30 years ago in New York City at the elementary, middle school, high school, and college levels. And for me, it's about a return on investment. And we talk specifically about return on investment analyses. Our return on investment is really focused on the percentage of students who are achieving the outcomes as set by the state standards, but also nationally and globally, because we want our students to be competitive in a global community. So as I shared with you, we have a number of indicators right now in terms of accountability. Many of you might be aware of the new receivership accountability designation of 2 of our schools, our middle school and high school, based on the 2012-2013 data, 8 years prior for the high school, 6 years prior for the middle school. These schools are under something called independent receivership. And what that means is we have to be strategic and focused and intentional about achieving demonstrable indices as measured by the state standardized assessments, graduation rate, and other indicators, attendance, disciplinary infractions, and so forth. Let me take you on a very quick demographic snapshot of our district. We serve a very diverse school district. We have about 8 school sites, 7 school sites, and 1 alternative site for a smaller learning environment that we just implemented this year. About 4,700 students, and the 298 students who are out of district, that's important for us because not only do they count for our accountability, but they also count in terms of our data specifically for our budgeting purposes and programmatic purposes. So I want to show you just some quick slides on our achievement. We have actually begun to ratchet up the work, so our graduation rate is up about 10 percentage points in the past 20 months. Our grades 3 through 8 performance data, if you look at the data indices, you're seeing higher performance on from those students on grades 3 through 8, state standardized assessments in English language arts and mathematics. We're also looking at our pre-K and kindergarten data, and I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank Assemblyman Frank Skirtatos, because this year we were able to bring in an additional $1 million of Assembly bullet aid for our kindergarten program. We were the only school district in the Hudson Valley without a full-day kindergarten program, and now we're able to fund that program this year. I do want to just say it's not a sustainable funding source, and so we have to look at sustainable funding sources. I would be remiss if I didn't share with you our budgeting piece. Our major funding source is the state education department. 65% of our dollars, unlike many school districts in this area, 65% of our dollars come from New York State Education Department. And one of the biggest challenges in that, any fluctuations in state aid, as you saw this year, have an indelible impact on the work that we do as a school district. Of equal importance, and I just want to talk a little bit about the cost drivers. For us, about 80% of our dollars are allocated for our human capital, so that's both salaries and benefits, and that's a non-negotiable kind of cost driver. This year, with the 65% of our dollars coming from state aid, you might have been aware of some of the discourse in the media, particularly around this idea that across the state, the average increase in state aid was about 6%, but for our school district, Poughkeepsie City School District, one of the lowest performing school districts and the highest needs with 86% poverty, Our school district only received about 3%. So I'm going to leave you with just our theory of action for how we do business and invite you to join us. If you look at the slide that talks about effective partnerships in Poughkeepsie, we need your help in achieving our goal of top 10% by the year 2020. I do want to recognize some of our partners in this work. They're making this aspirational goal a reality. I want to recognize our Dutchess County Regional Chamber of Commerce. We have an unprecedented opportunity where we have a career action center located in our high school, focused specifically on helping students develop the knowledge, skills, and competencies for business and 21st century careers. And finally, I do want to recognize our newest program, which is in partnership with our president of the Dutchess Community College, Dr. Eddington, who's in the audience, and Dr. Gambino. That program is a $2.8 million program, which is focused specifically on our 9th grade students who are currently taking college courses, and in 4 years, they will graduate free of charge with an associate's degree in engineering and their high school diploma. That was a highly competitive grant, 700 school districts in New York State, only 10 school districts received that grant. So I do want to just say thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about the work that we're doing in Poughkeepsie. Once again, I welcome you to partner with us to help us achieve the goal of delivering on the promise of a high-quality education for the children we serve. Thank you.